Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I will explain at the end of the video why I didn't make any videos yesterday. But being honest in South Africa and being a politician or being a civil servant truly is the most dangerous trait that you can have. In fact, more and more it would appear that any public servant that is honest, that is trying to do their job, will absolutely be removed from life itself. You won't be fired, you won't be let go, they'll simply kill you. Now, political killings isn't anything new in South Africa. In fact, KwaZulu-Natal, the very thing with General Mkhwanazi and the ad hoc committee as well as the Madlanga Commission, that all started as a result of politicians dying by the dozens in KwaZulu-Natal, effectively killing anyone that stands in their way as the cartels of South Africa fight for control over the nation. But more and more often nowadays, at least, I would say for maybe the last 2 years, we have started to see a severe increase in the number of civil servants, people who were honest, submitted honest reports, asked too many questions, were removed slowly but surely. In fact, here is a list of just the last few years in terms of political killings. Just 10 years. And this list is long, actually. If you scroll down, these are just the ones that we know were absolutely connected to political reasons. There are probably many more that are killed almost every single day who are either so small and insignificant that national news just isn't going to write about them, or we're not entirely sure whether or not those deaths were in fact a result of political killings. And yet there's been another one. Mpho Mafole. Now, the country is on the brink. People in South Africa are sick and tired. We can see how the public sentiment has started to shift just in the way that the ANC has started to conduct itself. How the ANC is desperately trying to clean up their act, making a very public announcement of the 10-point plan that they now have to save the economy, constantly going after the people who are corrupt, except never going after the people who control the people who are corrupt. So the ANC is genuinely trying to do the right stuff in order to convince the country that, hey, we are in fact trying to stop the corruption, and we're going to work very, very hard to get that done. Now, I want to be clear. Corruption in quasi or dictatorships aren't a new thing. What South Africa is going through really isn't unique. We have seen this in China. We see it in China every single day. When you listen to economists that come from China, they all say the exact same thing. China is an incredibly corrupt nation. The difference is that the government allows you to be corrupt provided you don't get caught and provided you don't get too greedy. Jacob Zuma himself said, hey, the cadres or the comrades need to eat. Ultimately, this was in response to why they don't act against the massive amounts of corruption in South Africa. And ultimately, what that means is, look, if we want a country that functions, you have to allow the criminals a few crumbs. If they're not eating, they'll bring the country to a standstill. And this is what we saw in Soviet Russia. It's what you see in countries like Venezuela, in places like Cuba. Everywhere you go, where governments or revolutionary movements take power, there is a massive amount of corruption. This has to happen because the revolutionary movement needs to stay in power. The only way they stay in power is if their friends who don't get into government are still kept happy, because revolutionary groups oftentimes have a lot of backers, people who are more than happy to back financially, provided that they get the benefits of this backing once the dust settles. Now, Mpho's case is actually very interesting. You see, the municipality of Ekurhuleni is already a very badly run municipality. In fact, it has not had a clean audit in forever, and Ekurhuleni is, for the most part, falling apart, just like the rest of Joburg. On the 20th of June, 2025, Mafole conducts an audit of the procurement process in relation to a 1.8 billion rand tender for chemical toilets. I just want to highlight this. The amount of red tape that is involved with the tender process, all of it, by the way, is meant to stem corruption, because there's so many different committees that are part of the decision-making process. When you read through it, it's like the BAC, the BEC, the BBEEC. It's like so many different committees that have to sign off on any individual tender, and then they have to get all of these tender processes. But anyways, so the municipality realizes that their tender process may not have been spick and span. And the leader of the tender process, or the procurement office of Ekurhuleni, decides to request an audit. And Mpho is the one given the audit, which he actually does. And he does it actually very, very well. He showcases a number of severe irregularities within the people who were chosen, but more importantly, also within the people who were disqualified, oftentimes citing that the people who were disqualified had the exact same quotes. They had the exact same information that they had given through to the municipality, but they were disqualified while others were allowed. Now, the contract is worth 1.8 billion, but the contract isn't just for one company. It's for many companies. I do want to take 2 seconds here just to quickly talk about, why are we doing chemical toilet tenders? Why aren't we just building toilets? It would be cheaper. I used to do plumbing construction for a living. I could probably knock together 5 or 6 or maybe 10 toilets for 300,000-400,000 rand, if that, and it would take less than a month if you actually did it right and if you actually found the right plumbers to do it. Those toilets would last a hell of a lot longer than a chemically run porta potty, which is effectively what this is. Well, why are they doing tenders for chemical toilets? Because it's ongoing. The cadres don't just eat once, the cadres eat consistently, which is why almost every single solution in South Africa is almost always not a permanent one. Permanent solutions provide limited funding. Sort of the same as how the pharmaceutical companies operate. The pharmaceutical companies will never give you a tablet that cures you. There's no money to be made in a cure. But if they can give you a tablet that simply alleviates the symptoms, then you'll have to use the tablet forever, and that is very good business. Here is the internal report that he submits to his boss, Philip Rakgwala. So Philip Rakgwala gets the following message. The evaluation of bids was not fair and consistent, as the BEC officials did not apply proper due diligence when evaluating bid proposals for compliance with the evaluation criteria specifications. Incurrence of irregular expenditure, possible legal challenge of the award by the losing bidders if they believed that they were unfairly evaluated or that the tender was irregularly awarded, resulting in delays or disruptions in service delivery. That is the report. Basically, the report says, yeah, we can't go ahead with these tenders because we'll absolutely be sued up the wazoo. Then, the following Monday, after submitting the report, Mafole is invited to a day-long meeting at the Radisson Hotel near the OR Tambo International Airport with Ramaphosa and the new board management of ERWAT, Ekurhuleni's wastewater management utility. Now, the meeting itself is probably not that suspect because, hey, he's an auditor. Of course, he's going to be invited to meet the new boards and make sure that they're all well accounted. It's what happens afterwards that really is interesting, and then the story gets even wilder. You see, after the day-long meeting at the hotel, Mafole gets into his mother's car and he drives home. 30 minutes later, 4 gunmen, trained and armed, shoots him and kills him. They were laying in wait. According to News 24, they had been trailing him since the morning. What do you want to bet that at that hotel he was asked quietly to change his report? But Mpho wouldn't do that. Mpho probably had some values, some principles, and he said, look, we can't do this. We're going to get sued, and then I'm going to be hung out to dry because I'm the auditor on this. I will not stand down. And then the gunmen took care of the problem. Because why deal with red tape when you can just take out the issue? This is an all too regular occurrence here in South Africa. And then here's what Rakgwala submits to his boss. This is after receiving the internal audit report. We tested the 15 recommended bidders for award based on the evaluation criteria that was included in the bid document and did not identify any non-compliance issues. We are therefore in agreement with the BEC's Bid Evaluation Committee recommendation to the BAC Bid Adjudication Committee on the recommended bidders. This is not what this report says. When News 24 reaches out to the Ekurhuleni Metro, they simply say, hey, this is part of a police investigation and we won't be dealing with this matter in public. And they end their response by saying, we wish to assure you that the city remains fully committed to transparency, accountability, and good governance. That right after they said, well, we will absolutely not be transparent, nor will we do any good governance because we have internal reports that show our bid processes and tender processes are completely flawed, and yet we'll just kill the man that submits the reports. You see, the issue in South Africa is that we are truly now a mafia state. As I covered in, I believe, Monday's videos, with a professor actually highlighting as much. I believe it was a professor at the Northwest University, Divenage, I want to say. I can't remember his name exactly, but he gave the exact definition of what a mafia state is. It's when it becomes impossible to discern between the mafia and the criminal elite within government. And I think we have crossed that threshold a long time ago. Fundamentally, if you live in South Africa, if you are a civil servant, it is almost required that you look the other way. And this is exactly why they do it. They know that they can't just hire dishonest people because they do need some people to do some of the work some of the time. But if you make it so dangerous that speaking out could actually cost you your life, if other civil servants who may be honest and may actually want to do their job see this happening, they will be far less or far more reluctant to step forward when they see irregularities happening. And that, I believe, is the long play. That's why in countries like Russia, eventually people just stopped trying. Eventually, everyone got in on the game, and those who weren't in on the game were most certainly not going to talk about the game because you would just disappear. And that is the reality of South Africa. As always, hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't. It is free after all. And then a massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members for your continued support. To become a patron, link in the description down below or join button right below this video. Now, I told you I'll tell you what I did yesterday. Yesterday, I went to a shop. The shop is called Go Natural. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. But they effectively grind the wheat right in front of you. You buy the wheat fully formed with all of the germ and everything else inside of it, not just the little carbohydrate bit that you get in the normal flour that you buy in the shops. No. This flour, once it's ground, needs to be used within 3 days. If you don't, it will start to mold and it will go bad. So you basically have to buy it and use it immediately. I went to the shop, I bought some flour, I came home and I baked some bread. Well, I actually baked focaccia. Cheese and garlic and butter focaccia. It was amazing. It's unlike anything I've ever tasted before, but I will say the effects of it is insane. Normally, bread, you can eat as much bread as you want, but this, I had like a block this big almost, and I had it with some chicken, and I was full, like absolutely stuffed. I struggled to finish all of the bread. So clearly, it's working. If you can find something like that close to you, if you're in Cape Town, specifically in the Helderberg area, these guys are in Firgrove. So just, Google Maps, Go Natural. Go check them out. It's absolutely fantastic. Otherwise, go somewhere else and see if you can find a place near you that actually does that and try it at least. It's actually quite interesting. They actually say that people with gluten allergies can even use this because it genuinely has no real effect. But okay. That's it from me. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.